think we're streaming.
We are streaming. I just need to mute the volume here. Okay, we should be good to go.
Okay, welcome everybody. And I'd like to call to order the May 13th, 2020 meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation. I'd like to go to this meeting first because of the bond resolution. I think we should get it done. And so welcome. Thank you everybody for attending. I only see the members of the committee and staff and council, but I assume if anybody submitted comments, Ina, did anybody want to talk to us?
No, nobody submitted comments to me via email.
Okay, so that's privilege of the floor. You know, and it's amazing, this technology, but I worry that people aren't paying attention to what we're doing, and I'm not sure how to get that to a better place, but here we are. So let's proceed to business. And we have new business, 2019 Paris documents informational. Heather, do you want to talk to that for a minute?
Sure. So in your agenda, you have a link to all of the documents that were submitted via the online state reporting system that's called Paris. Just wanted to let you know that everything went up. We were given the go-ahead by the state to be a little bit late. The deadline was March 31st. Given the situation, we were still waiting for some of the reporting from some of the active projects. We did receive all of that and everything went up. We were just, you know, a week and a half late. So I wanted everyone to be aware that it's up there. The one thing that we're working on is all the project reports. We then develop a jobs report for the IDA, and that will be presented next month.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the Paris documents? I'm looking, okay. We have old business, and it's the Ithaca College bond refinance application approval. Before we get to that, Heather, do you want to just explain what we talked about yesterday about the public hearing that I think is May 22nd?
Sure. So we have, based on the federal requirements, we will have a public hearing for this. We are allowed to have the public hearing after the authorizing resolution is approved by the IDA today. We do have that scheduled for, I believe, 10 a.m. on the 22nd. That after the public hearing, it will then go to the Housing and Economic Development Committee of the county legislature for approval, and then on to the county legislature. So it should be approved by the legislature. I'm thinking our target is that first meeting in June.
Okay. All right. And the Ithaca College bond refinance application itself. We've heard presentations on this. Does anybody have comments or questions regarding this bond? And Heather, maybe you want to just summarize again briefly what this is about.
Sure. So Ithaca College had approached us about refinancing existing debt they held with the IDA to take advantage of a fixed interest rate and lower interest rates, saving them cash, saving them financial resources over the long term. So this is just refinancing existing debt to put them in a better financial position.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Rich, you didn't have a motion yet. Do we need a motion?
Yes, could somebody move it? Martha.
I would move it. I move it, yeah.
Right, do I have a second? Mike Sigler seconds, thank you. Okay, and let's do roll call. I'm gonna go in order of the people I see on the screen. Ann Corman.
Yes.
Laura Lewis.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Jennifer Tavares, you're muted, Jennifer.
I see that. Yes, sorry.
Okay, John Guttridge,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. That's unanimous. Great. And we'll proceed on to the chair's report. Heather?
That would be you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez. I have no chair's report for the Development Corporation. So let me bounce it back to you. Staff report. Thank you for waking me up.
I will echo the chair. I have no staff report.
Okay. Great. And then minutes from April 8th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Raise your hand.
Rich,
You all frozen?
Rich, your audio is in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ann Corman moves. Or are you asking a question? Laura Lewis seconds. I'm going to take that as a motion in a second. Any questions or comments about the minutes? All right. Again, let's do a roll call. Ann Corman,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Mike Stigler,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Jennifer Tavares,
Yes.
and John Guttridge.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Great. Okay. Any other business to come before the Development Corporation? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Somebody move that. Laura Lewis moves. Martha seconds. I'm going to take a raised hand vote on this. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? All right. Unanimous. Let's move on to the IDA. And I call to order the meeting of the Hopkins County Industrial Development Agency meeting for May 13th, 2020. And again, privilege of the floor. I see nobody present on the meeting. Ina, did we have any comment for the IDA?
No, I did not receive any comments for the IDA.
Okay. Laura, I see your comment. I'm going to shut off my video. I'm not sure you guys need to see me, and it might help with the audio. Do you hear any improvement? Is that any better? Okay. I will go invisible. Might be better on more than one count. Okay. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we can proceed to new business. And again, Heather, do you want to speak to the Paris report for the IDA?
This is just informational that the Paris report, which is the state's reporting, online reporting, was due March 31st, and we submitted it a little bit after that. We were given an exemption to be late, given the situation. The reports are on the IDA's website, and so this link can take you there to all those reports.
Okay. Is there anything in the reports out of the ordinary that you'd want to tell the IDA about?
There is nothing. An annual report that details the projects that we approved, our financial reports, all of our audit reports, general policies, nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay. Martha, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I saw a couple of last names, first names switched. Like Rich John, yours is easy to do, but it was shown as John, Guttridge, it was John, comma, Rich, and then there were a couple, like maybe Sigler, comma, Mike, or, I mean, there were a couple that were switched, and I don't know if that's,
Material?
I'm sure it doesn't matter, but if that's something that can be fixed. There were a few of them, I think.
Which report were you referring to, Martha?
Well, it was somewhere in the Paris reports.
Their online system. So the ones that say Paris are PDFs of what's in their online system. So you just download the report, and that's how the state prints it out. But I mean,
We'll
didn't do
take a
anything
look.
different.
We'll take a look next year. It sounds like maybe the first and last names might have been transposed, and we'll
Yeah,
note on the file to take a look next year.
That's what I mean. So I didn't see PDFs. Were they? Oh, I guess you could. All right, and I don't have it up in front of me right now. So you had to scroll way down and see all the many pages. So those are
Right. So the online system you're inputting into their database, and there is a section for the board of directors. So you can put in Martha
Yeah.
Robertson, Mike Figler, and it's for last year, 2019.
Uh-huh.
And then when it's certified and submitted, you go in and you ask for a copy of the report, which becomes a
Okay.
PDF, which is what we
Okay.
post on the website. So I can see how the state put it into their online system, but it's the same as every year, but I can double check it.
Okay. Thank you. Really critical issue, you know.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else about the Paris report? Why don't we proceed to the TCIDA fund balance memo to county informational? Heather?
Okay, as a result of TCAD's MOU with the county for economic development services, the county has asked that every year we provide a fund balance report regarding the IDA funding. Since the IDA does provide about a third of TCAD's budget, the county wanted to make sure that the fund balance was in line with being able to adequately support TCAD, but not getting too high of a fund balance that we could otherwise be using for other economic development activities. This is the memo that I put together that I sent to the Housing and Economic Development Committee. I reported at their last meeting our fund balance available at the end of the year. And then I outlined those few projects that the Development Corporation actually agreed to participate in financially. So our remaining fund balance after that $600,000 allowance that the county has given us is about $23,000.
Heather, can you clarify the allowances sort of where they're saying we should maintain sort of no higher than that? And so that sort of that excess 423,000, it's not that allowance is something that's coming to us from them. That's our fund balance that they've suggested we should allow before we have to tell them that we're above our limit or whatever.
Yes, so the language in the MOU with TCAD says anything, if there's any balance above $600,000 that we report to the committee of the legislature and give them any indications we have of what we might be doing with those funds.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's no limitation from the county on us using our fund balance as we might need to. Is that correct?
There is not.
Okay. All right. Any further questions, comments on the fund balance report? All right.
Yeah,
Violet,
Rich.
oh, yeah.
Rich, yeah, I did want to ask, Heather, you've, I'm sure, been watching our budget reports from Jason Molino and understand that he is looking at third quarter cuts for the third quarter for payments to sponsored agencies. Offhand, I can't remember. And the TCAD money from the county comes partly from the general fund and partly from the hotel, the room tax. Can you remind me whether that's going to include TCAD, the cut?
So this year, 50% of the county's support comes from room tax and 50% comes from the general fund. That was a decision that the county made. The guidance that I was given by Jason Molino was an across the board 25% cut to our third quarter payment. He did not say, as far as I'm concerned, it's one payment and it's cut by 25%. He didn't say what was being cut from where. And so TCAD has adjusted its budget accordingly, taking into account that reduction in the third quarter payment, and we're waiting for guidance on the fourth quarter payment. There was actually this past year also an over target request of $40,000 that would support half of the water and sewer study that I've been given guidance has been cut by 25% third quarter as well.
Okay. And how are you?
Is this a situation where we might need to rely on fund balance?
Well, I mean, to be clear though, that's TCAD, not IDA, right? And we have a contract specifically between us and TCAD to administer the IDA, right?
Yes, so TCAD has adjusted its budget. The other about 40% of our budget comes from investors and companies that believe in TCAD's mission and the work we do to support a prosperous economy here in Tompkins County. And it's hard to know where those investors will fall. So we've made some projections. We've cut investors by about 50%. We've already, in our budget, we're anticipating similar fourth quarter cuts from the county of 25%. And we've adjusted our expenses accordingly. We think we'll end up a little bit, I want to say maybe about $30,000 in the hole at the end of the year. TCAD has adequate savings to cover that if that is the case. We are not at this time looking at coming back to the IDA to fill any of that loss.
Okay. Anything further on this? Next item is pilot relief for hospitality industry downtown discussion.
So we're seeing 70% reduction in average room nights over the remainder of March and into April. And of course, all of the downtown hotels, of which we have a pilot with all of them, have started calling me to say, we're not operating, we're operating a skeleton crew. We're projecting significant financial losses, not only this year, but probably into next year. Is there anything that the IDA can do to help us recover from this? Being vibrant parts of downtown and providing, opportunity for visitors to come here and spend money, not only downtown, but in other areas of the county that definitely supports our economy. So rather than one at a time, I said, okay, well, why don't I just ask the IDA if there's any appetite for looking at this or if this is off the table. So I'm just looking for some guidance on where to go with this.
Okay. Anybody?
First,
Jennifer?
wow, great job, Rich. I am probably the most sympathetic person on the board to the plight of our hospitality partners and industries. That being said, I think this would be a really difficult thing for us to consider doing. Almost no one else in the county has the luxury of coming to the IDA and asking for help with their property taxes right now. I would way rather have had the county consider, do we need to actually implement all of the increases that we just sent out the door? Or is there some way we can modify our assessment increases for everyone universally, then to pick and choose a couple of winners and say that they get a break on their property taxes when absolutely no one else is going to? I just don't think there's any way we could. Personally, I would really struggle to entertain this request. Thanks.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Anybody else?
Everything John just said.
John? John?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to agree with what Jennifer just said. Thank you for saying it so well, Jennifer.
Okay. Anybody else? Martha?
I think you're not looking at the participants on the side, I guess. Annie had her little blue hand up first.
Oh, okay. I'll open that up as well. Go ahead, Martha.
So I was saying Annie should go ahead. Did you have your hand up, Annie?
Yes, thank you. What Jennifer said, I would just really reiterate the same thing. I concur with what she said. You know, across the board, I would like to give everybody in the county a tax relief, but if you lowered everybody's, then really you wouldn't be lowering everybody's. We would have to be cutting, what we'd have to do is make cuts, way more cuts than, you know, laying off people and doing other things. So I don't see that as an option to consider right now when we're looking at, for instance, just the county, never mind the city. But we're looking at furloughs, possible layoffs, $11 to $18 million in the hole, at least for the county right now.
Martha?
I would agree with that, but also people may not realize that I can't remember if they pay room tax on a quarterly basis or monthly. At least in the last month, maybe two, the hotels have not paid their room tax. So they may be down 70% in room nights, but that means that they're still getting 30% of the room nights. And they have filed, we heard this from Rick Snyder, Budget and Capital meeting on Monday. They have filed that they have collected room tax, but they have not, I think, uniformly paid it. This is a really unusual situation, never saw it before. And so there's that. So I would not agree with the relief on property tax. And that's another issue that we are considering on the county side.
Okay. I guess, Laura, go ahead.
I just wanted to also express support for what Jennifer and other colleagues are saying at this point. I think it's really difficult to offer relief in that industry. And I am very concerned with what Martha just mentioned about hotels not paying the room tax. And there are others who are raising questions about the viability of a conference center again, particularly because we're not seeing the room tax being collected at this point. And it's difficult to know the picture, the forecast going forward. We don't know, for example, if Cornell and Ithaca College will be holding classes here in the city or if they will be doing remote learning again in the fall semester. So there's so much unknown. I think it would be unwise, as others have said, to offer relief at this point.
I guess I would jump in if my audio is working to say I generally agree with that. You know, in the bigger picture, we certainly don't want all our major hotels to fail. You know, what it looks like we may be heading towards is we've had an uncertainty crisis, and it can bleed into a confidence crisis, where you can have really significant damage coming out of that. I would hope that there is a large-scale federal response that gets us further along the road to making sure these businesses can limp through. But more to come there. But I agree with the sentiment of everybody has expressed that we would be hard pressed to provide relief here without doing it elsewhere. Yeah. Mike Sigler, you're the only one who didn't talk. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, you know, it's fine. The majority, I think, is going a certain direction, and I have no objection to that. So I didn't really have a strong feeling on it either way.
Okay.
I was
mean
thankful
to
that
put you on
everybody
the
had to
spot.
say what they said. No, it's fine. No, I was glad everybody spoke out, and I think that that's probably the right direction to go. So.
Okay. Heather?
I appreciate the feedback, so that I have some clear guidance to go back and let them know. I understand that, you know, we're all sort of in varying positions of looking at significant losses in revenues. And so, you know, I assumed that this is the way this board would move forward. I just wanted to make sure that I had the support of the IDA to go back and give them that information.
Okay. All right. Moving on. I do not have a chair's report other than Heather, you and I were talking about the question regarding the city and their housing requirement. Are you going to cover that on your staff report?
So I was going to ask if we could add to the agenda 2 items. One, Cayuga Operating Company, which I had sent you their correspondence yesterday. And then second, to talk about guidance on housing projects.
Okay. Well, why don't we pick up the housing projects question, and Heather, maybe you could just summarize that for everybody.
Okay, so we've had, and we do have a committee that hasn't met in a while, but we do have an ongoing issue with the IDA delivering incentives for housing. Primarily, the only place that we deliver for housing is under the city's CTAP policy in the downtown density district. The city went ahead and updated their CTAP policy, which is the first phase of projects coming to the IDA. They need to get through that city process and their pre-application first. Their pre-application guidelines say that projects must provide a 20% set aside of affordable units, and they'll receive a 30-year abatement at a certain percentage level. The IDA has discussed this, set up a committee, has met a couple of times. The IDA was not comfortable with adopting that policy and had several concerns with that policy, one being the foregone tax dollars, compliance, another being monitoring, and financial feasibility. I did go back to the city's planning committee and met with them. I looked back through my notes. It was back in November, and sort of laid that out and said, you know, for right now, because the IDA does not have a policy and because the city has sort of said, this is what we want, projects, if there were any housing projects downtown that wanted to apply through that CTAP policy, if they couldn't meet the 20%, the city wouldn't pass them on to the IDA. So we've got a little bit of a conundrum there. I did, at that meeting, when I talked to the planning committee at the Common Council, I said, you know, here's what I propose, that we at the IDA take these projects directly on a case-by-case basis, determine what works best. If there's some ability to provide affordable housing and the IDA can come up with a model that works for these on a case-by-case basis, we'll do that until we have a policy in place. They were appreciative of the conversation and I think supportive of that. I've had conversations with the mayor. He had certainly been supportive of my doing that. So I did go ahead and take the City Harbor project directly without going through the CTAP process. City Harbor is not in a financial position to be providing affordable units due to the significant site work and costs for all the public amenities. So I sort of brought it in saying, recommending that we do this because of rather than providing the affordable units, that the project is actually providing significant public amenities. So we did that. We've got a couple of other projects sort of out there in the wings and on the docket that have been contacting me. Most recently, I've got Vism Development Group is working on 2 projects on Cherry Street that flank on either side of the art house, the 100% affordable project that we had delivered incentives for. And so I just want to make sure that I'm on the right page with this project before they start submitting an application, that if I go ahead and look at their financials and come up with some sort of recommendation. We've had a couple of conversations. They recognize that their rents will not be as high as City Center because they cannot meet that down on Cherry Street. They'll probably, right now, their financial model shows about 10 to 15% less in rents across the board for their 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms and studios than what we're seeing downtown. They financially can't make the project work without some sort of incentive. My initial reaction would be to look at the 7-year base abatement that we would provide for non-financial need or for a manufacturer that's in our standard policy. But before I do that, I wanted to make sure that you know, the IDA is still of the mindset that that's what we should be doing.
Thank you, Heather. And I think this is something that's important for us to think about and give some guidance on. So I invite comments. I'm happy to jump in, but I'd like to, oh, okay. Anne, you have your hand up. There you go.
Thank you. I think as far as the public amenities, which are, in my opinion, would be a benefit in that area, I would definitely entertain, you know, some type of abatement or consideration, because in that whole, like I said, in that whole area for the inlet and, you know, in the lake area, we don't have a lot so far. So I think this is a step in the right direction, and especially as for the next foreseeable future, of course, it's good to get people outside and enjoying things. So I would be for this, looking into it.
Okay, Martha?
Annie, you meant saying an abatement for City Harbor that with the public amenities that they've already got in the project. Is that what you meant? And not requiring additional affordable units. Is that what you meant?
Yes, I mean, it's right. I mean, I would always like to see affordable units, so I'm not saying I don't want affordable units, but if they're looking at, as far as the public amenities, I would consider some type of abatement.
Okay, I was on Vism, I think you're talking about 2 projects, 2 buildings, I guess, that Todd Fox and his company would build. I don't know if there are other unusual public amenities. 10 to 15% less than downtown rents doesn't sound like.
Looks like Martha's sort of timed out.
That's of course expect a rent farther from that. What? You lost
Oh,
me?
you cut off.
Can you hear me now?
You disappeared for a good long while there.
You want to
Oh,
turn
okay.
off your
All right.
video, Martha, so your audio is better? There you
Yeah, I just turned off my video. So let's see if that works. I just want to say, I thought, so Vism is proposing 2 other projects. I assume there aren't a lot of other public amenities attached. It's just really 2 apartment buildings. I would like, when the housing committee met last, we talked a lot about how the foregone taxes, if we do a straight, give us 20% affordable units and we'll give you more of an abatement. If we do a straight deal like that, it seems a really inefficient way to use tax dollars, use public dollars. We talked about how the Community Housing Development Fund, in contrast, is able to use public dollars to leverage lots and lots of, 90%, 97% of the housing, of the projects we've funded through the housing fund, those funds come from outside the county and only 3% are the local tax dollars. I would like, here, let me go through this. I would like to see us establish a policy before you have more applications that then get grandfathered in. I would, if anybody, if this is a wild idea just to throw out, I'd like to propose that we establish a policy that pick a number, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000, whatever per housing unit they have to give to the Community Housing Development Fund if they're looking for a housing abatement. It's a one-time cost, and I'm obviously making up a number, but a one-time cost. So it could be wrapped into a mortgage or whatever else. But at least they're doing something, and then those dollars get used throughout the community through the housing fund, which is a great mechanism that seems to be very effective. So rather than burden developers with what I think is a really tough set of numbers when you ask for ongoing lowered rents, I would like to propose that. And if like there's support for that, I'd like to make that a motion then and kind of establish that. So before you have any new applications come in, that's the intention of the IDA.
Okay, I think we would need a lot of further discussion on that. I've got two other people, John and Laura, that want to speak. So let's hear from them and then decide where we want to go. John?
Yeah, so Heather, you said the rents were 10 or 15 below what we're seeing in downtown. When you say what we're seeing in downtown, are you talking about specifically projects like City Center and Herald Square that are the sort of higher end luxury projects in downtown? So we're not talking about the general market rents in downtown specifically, yeah. And I think I want to echo what I'm pretty sure I heard Martha say before her audio glitched out, which that's sort of not that, that doesn't feel like that's really that impressive to me. It's like, those are still some pretty high rents. And I think that we've gotten a lot of sort of negative feedback from the community about these sort of subsidies for, high-end luxury apartment buildings. When we look at things like the project at City Harbor, where they're providing tremendous public amenity. I mean, there were like, what, 7 parks in that thing, and like, 4 linear miles of, waterfront, boardwalk, whatever, like a ton in that for the community. And, from the press releases that I saw from the Vision projects, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, it's another apartment building. I'm glad that they're doing it. I think it's great, but I just don't really see a substantial driver of an amenity in that case. I mean, we of course always want to look at that balance of like, are we going to drive the creation of a project that wouldn't otherwise exist, which is going to push those tax dollars in a really substantial way. But I mean, I'm not sure that I would necessarily buy that on those projects without some substantial analysis. But I really think that we should be looking at what that public benefit is on a bigger picture perspective, and see what we can maybe get in that regard.
Okay, Laura?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with some of what John said. The City Harbor project is further along, and they have been very clear about the multiple public benefits, public amenities that they are providing. I haven't seen as much in that regard from Vism on their Cherry Street project. There was discussion at an earlier time of developers possibly contributing to a housing fund that would, rather than having those public amenities or requiring affordable units. Sorry, I'm getting multiple dings on my phone. Rather than requiring affordable units, I think Heather has been very clear about the finances that just don't work for a number of these developers. And I want to be sensitive to that. I don't want to see housing being curtailed because we need all housing. We definitely need affordable housing. I'm a huge proponent of affordable housing. We do need housing in general in the community. So a couple of things I'd like to see more about VISM's public amenities. I need to look at their proposal a lot more carefully. City Harbor has provided more information over a period of time. And I'd like an update on the discussions that had taken place earlier about there being a fund that developers may be able to contribute into rather than meeting any percentage of affordable housing in their projects.
Okay, let me just jump in here because I think these are all good comments, but there is no proposal yet in front of us. What Heather is really looking at is, should she be discussing the possibility of tax abatements with these two projects where we know they're not going to fit the CTAP 20% requirement? Do we want to have some further discussion with those developers or tell them, you don't qualify, we're going to stop? So that's kind of framing where we should be thinking about this. And I have comments, but Jennifer, you're ahead of me. And Heather, I saw you.
I just wanted to clarify that I was in no way saying that these Cherry Street projects provide significant public amenities. I was just saying
Okay.
that we took City Harbor because of the public amenities.
Mhm.
That wouldn't be, one of the reasons for taking this. It would be simply that, the housing situation in this community is such that we need housing at every level and every price point, and there are several studies that bear that out, and I believe that is why the IDA started delivering incentives in the first place in terms of density downtown.
Okay. Jennifer?
I guess I just wanted to say, not to confuse matters or anything, but I do think that when the analysis was done before, that contributing to the fund was one of the best ways that these projects that would otherwise be difficult to deliver affordable units in could help us accomplish our housing goals as a community. And so, I guess I just wanted to reiterate my support for that idea. I know it might need to be fleshed out a little bit more, but I wouldn't want us to wait terribly long to figure it out if there's general support for that idea. I thought we got pretty far along in agreeing that that was a good idea. And so I think it's just a question of, what's the calculation, or what's the donation? How do we determine what's the appropriate amount? Unless you already know that answer, Heather. So thanks, Rich.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take a turn. I have Ann, Martha, and John with your hands up. Is that right? My view is that we certainly don't want to get sideways with the city. I mean, the city passed the CTAP requirements because of their interest in having housing managed a certain way. We should be cognizant of that. At the same time, it seems like if we can get new economic development that builds the tax base and new housing where we're not losing any existing housing, you're not really any worse off by helping these projects in some manner. I think we need to think about what that help is, and it should be something less than a project that does meet the CTAP requirements, but it shouldn't be zero from my view. I'm thinking that the committee that was looking at this housing question should probably meet, but in the short term, we tell Heather, yes, continue to have conversations with the developers of these projects to see where they're going. So then Martha and then John.
Thank you, Rich, and everybody. I think I would point out that Todd Fox was part of discussions. And I don't know, it seems like years ago, even when we were working on the housing summit, and he was on the committee, and he talked about, look, I would give a donation, to help if I can say, in that case, it was to build an extra floor on an apartment building, let's say. I would, rather than have to raise lower rents for an ongoing unspecified period of time, it would be more manageable. So he really had actually suggested the idea of donating to a fund. I would also point out that it would be much easier for TCAD, for IDA staff to manage, a one-time donation that goes into an already existing mechanism, community housing fund. And rather than anybody having to try to forever or 10 or 30, whatever years, calculate what the rents are and are people income qualified. So I think if in terms of the city, I also would say it's more fair to do it that way than just sort of negotiate on a case by case basis. Because then you're subjecting, you're
John?
throwing out this.
Oh.
But have you lost me? I'm just,
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I interrupted.
yeah, just quickly, the case by case basis, it just could be kind of fraught with questions about is it really fair? So I would encourage putting something real together. I would encourage telling Vism that this is the direction we're going in so that they know what to expect. But that, with that, I would certainly support housing like this.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I think just to sort of clarify, and I think everything that everybody else has said really does help kind of clarify my thinking. It's not so much that I don't think that we should deliver an incentive to these projects at all, so much as we have to sort of understand that public benefit. And I think that there's this timing question here of like we don't have time today to put a policy in place. I think the policy that Martha's suggesting in concept is very sensible. It's like definitely the direction the committee was going. I think that it's something that looks like it fits. And so, I'd love to see us move in that direction. And we can even just tell, Todd or anyone else that that might reach out to us at this time that this is the direction we're heading. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do, if somebody came in sort of sooner and said, I need something now, and here's what I'm willing to do, we could consider those on a case-by-case basis. We have that authority. I think that it's something that we shouldn't do as our long-term policy or our long-term solution to this. We should proceed diligently towards a policy-based solution, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't say, look, this is substantial public benefit that's coming out of this. There's this, $200,000 donation that's going to the housing trust, and they're gonna, build some of the trail extension in front of their building and, do some other stuff and bring us a proposal and let's take a look at it. I don't think you should shut down the conversation with them, but I also don't see anything yet that shows us that there's a substantial public benefit that would drive an incentive.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Heather, do you feel you have the guidance?
Absolutely. This is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the Cayuga operating plant email that we received? Heather, want to speak to that?
Sure. So Cayuga Operating Company, the IDA has historically delivered a pilot because there's a lot of uncertainty around what it would be taxed at full assessment. So several times, because it was such a large taxpayer, and we didn't want this to get, the community didn't want this to get tied up in the courts with the assessments changing. We have historically, since the 1990s, I believe, had a group of taxing jurisdiction representatives get together as a negotiating committee to negotiate what the pilot payment will be. And so there've been 3 or 4 of those pilot amendments over the years as Cayuga Operating Company's operations have declined. And we all know that they have actually closed now. The negotiating committee met twice last year with and without the representatives from Cayuga Operating Company, and were in good faith negotiating a modification to the pilot when it was brought up by some of the taxing jurisdictions that since they're closing, wouldn't it just make better sense to terminate the pilot, put it back on the tax roll? The value of the property without a going concern is much lower than where we were at on our schedule with the existing pilot schedule. So that was the last negotiating committee meeting. The taxing jurisdictions had brought that up and said, why not just talk to the operating company about asking to be relieved from the pilot going back on the full tax rolls. I think the school district in particular was extremely supportive of that move, because if the taxes go unpaid when it's on the tax roll, they have more ability to recoup those unpaid taxes than if it were under pilot and the pilot payments aren't being paid. So there have been, I know, several conversations back and forth between Jay Franklin and the folks at Cuba Operating Company, and they have sent this correspondence to me that I forwarded to you yesterday, requesting that the IDA consider terminating the pilot. And I don't know if Russ wanted to add something to that. Russ has certainly been a part of those meetings and that coordination with the county assessment department.
Yeah, my understanding, can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, my understanding is that, the property somehow is already off of the exempt side of the tax rolls. The short of it is the pilot cost them more than do full taxes. As a matter of right, any company has the right to terminate a pilot and go back on the tax rolls. This does not forgive unpaid pilot payments, and the taxing jurisdictions, to the extent there are unpaid pilot payments after termination, would still have the right to seek those. So really, this is just implementing something that the company has requested, and the taxing jurisdictions, again, my understanding is that they support.
And I'm sorry, Russ, did you say that they have the right to do it regardless? Like they can just terminate and?
That's exactly right. Any company has the right to terminate a pilot and go back on the tax rolls. If for some reason they determine in year 4, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, that the pilot is not as valuable as they thought, they're authorized to terminate and go back on the tax rolls. The IDA would then be out of the transaction and they would be subject to full taxes, which is what they want here.
Okay, Martha?
Russ, that's really interesting. Of course, I never thought about it, but of course. Do we know how much the unpaid pilot payments are?
I've requested that information, and it's actually a partner of mine that does some work for them on the side. He's trying to compile it, but I don't know that number off the top of my head.
I've got the county taxes, $131,472.50 have not been paid. That includes the interest that's accrued. The town of Lansing also includes interest owing $32,104.80. The school district, we've not received word back from them whether they've been paid. Oh, Ina may have heard back.
I did late yesterday afternoon. I reached out to the school district and they have not paid this year's school taxes.
So the total school tax bill for the 2019-2020 school tax year was $421,900.
Oh.
So is that, okay, so they're late, right? Are they late at this point?
Mhm.
Is there any penalty or is it just the interest? I mean, I don't know, I'd bother with it, but is there a penalty?
Yeah, there's an interest charge that accrues on unpaid pilot amounts, which again, the taxing jurisdictions, even if we terminate, would be able to seek. And I don't remember exactly what that is, maybe 6%, something like that.
Okay, so I'm in favor of this. how does it relate if, or when, let's hope, when they start construction, they build a new, couple new buildings, they start the data center there. I think they've said it informally that they would not do a pilot, not ask for a pilot, that they would want to pay full taxes.
Well, the short of it is, if we terminate, the property goes back on the tax rolls, we're out of it. And if there's a project that comes down the road at a later date, that would have to be considered as a new project, new application, new pilot, and, start from scratch. So it's not as though the pilot comes back into play in the event they start construction on the project that was proposed or something different.
Okay. So these amounts you just read, they would still have to pay these amounts. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Okay, anybody else?
And
John?
so didn't we just do an incentive for this company to get some fiber line installed like 2 months ago? It was not an insignificant chunk of change. I don't remember the details.
So we agreed to provide a $50,000 match should a number of partners that applied for a grant to get fiber up to that the new project facility, if there is a new project to happen.
And that ultimately, I mean, this is the Cuga operating company that's like, $600,000 in arrears on their taxes, and we're providing this incentive. I mean, it's not that I don't want to get that done. It seems like sort of odd that we're going to give them 50 grand when they owe $600,000 to these various taxing authorities. Seems surprising to me, honestly. I guess it's not a very big number compared to what they owe and the bigger picture of getting the project done and all that other stuff. It just seems like we would expect municipal compliance before we would deliver any incentive.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware that they were past due on their taxes. I knew that the school tax they had paid last year in installments, but I was not aware that they were behind on any of this.
I'm not sure it's the same legal entity that is
Probably
moving
not.
forward with the fiber optic. Is it the same, Heather?
No, the company that is pursuing the fiber optics is a subsidiary of Herrit Power.
Yeah. And we also have a security interest in the land itself. So presumably this money would get paid or the property could be foreclosed upon. Not that we want to get there, but it does seem like the real issue is particularly the school district not having the ready cash for operations, but they should get it eventually.
I mean, I guess it just seems to me as like, so it's a subsidiary, whatever. I mean, it's like, it's the same property. It's probably a lot of the same players, and they probably have a substantial beneficial interest in the resulting project actually moving forward. And that's probably a not insignificant lever to be like, oh, by the way, like, your future project could be put in jeopardy if you don't become compliant. And I think that it does matter to the taxing authorities, especially now having that ready cash to continue to meet their obligations. I mean, we just heard the county's cutting 90 people. I'm sure the school district is in severe economic pain right now. Like, and I don't know if there's any specific action for us to take, but that does seem relevant to me.
I agree with everything you say, John. Martha?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. So they owe this, 600, whatever it is, 500,000. Is there a sense they won't pay it? Or is this to get out of these bills right now? Or is this about once they pay these bills and they are current in the next, from now on, these are the last pilot payment, they'll be on the tax rolls? Is that Russ or Heather?
Well, the intent is to put it back on the tax roll moving forward so that, the next tax bills will be based on a much lower actual value of a non-operating facility.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. And it does not, like I said, does not relieve the unpaid pilot amounts.
Okay.
My guess is, and I don't know this is just my guess, is that what will happen is they'll work out something with the taxing jurisdictions relative to the unpaid pilot amounts. But whether or not they have the ability to pay the full amounts that are due or not, I do not know.
But Russ, I assume that the pilot allows some sort of foreclosure.
As it stands,
Yes?
Yeah, so the pilot agreement that would provide the taxing jurisdictions with, and the general municipal law would provide the taxing jurisdictions the right to pursue unpaid contractual pilot payments. Now that the property is back on the tax rolls, in the event they do not pay normal ad valorem taxes, then the taxing jurisdictions could go through the tax lien process.
But can we foreclose for the amount under the pilot?
I'd have to look at the underlying documents on this one, which I was not involved in, but unless there is some sort of pilot mortgage, it's just a contractual right for the taxing jurisdictions to enforce payment.
It sounds like we
Unlike
need
a
to-
tax lien, which,
Yeah, it sounds like we need to try to find that out, because if they're able to avoid payment of these taxes because they were structured as a pilot, that's a pretty significant amount of money for them to be able to walk away from if there's a pathway for them to do it. So we should know. It's my view. Okay, Jennifer?
I was just gonna go back to the previous part of the conversation. So forgive me, my memory's fuzzy in terms of how we ended up doing the funding award to help with the grant application, or it's just it's a leveraged match in case they get the grant, right? It's not already committed. It's not out the door. I would think in any case, just so that this can't happen in the future. I know that was like a one-off. There probably wasn't an application. There's not an application process yet for things like that, right? I would assume though that we wouldn't enter into contracts or MOUs with anyone for a project without a question being asked of, are you current on all of your local school district and property tax obligations, or your local federal, state and federal tax obligations, or you and all your subsidiaries, or something along those lines, because that part of it does feel a little, I know it feels a little weird for several of us, and something like that would at least, I don't know if it would be a question on the front end or before we entered into an agreement with them, but it seems like it should be somewhere in the process. So thanks.
Yeah, standard contract agreement language, other contracts I've done for the IDA and the Development Corporation would have that language in there. And no, the money has not gone out the door, nor will it go out the door unless they actually receive the grant, and then there'll be a contracting phase. So this kind of thing would have been caught then.
Okay, Martha?
so I'm still confused. You're saying right now they can just declare the pilot done. Is that right?
I think that's a question for Russ.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, I was
Russ?
unmuting. No, the pilot does not go, the obligation for them to pay any amounts that are unpaid or otherwise due under the pilot does not go away as a result of the property going back on the tax rolls. The right of the taxing jurisdiction to pursue those payments would survive that. Like I said, I don't know what their plan is relative to making those payments or working something out with the taxing jurisdictions. I can dig a little deeper into that and find out what that plan is and how they, what they've done with the taxing jurisdictions to figure that out. But to answer your question, Martha, no, the obligation to make those payments does not get extinguished by virtue of the fact of the property going back on the tax rolls.
Okay, so I sorry to drag this out. They've been good partners. I want to, recognize the relationship where they've been working with the community, and nice dog, Jennifer. We've been working with them all these years, I want to assume that they want to make good on their obligations. So I would hate to get into this sort of thing. I mean, it sounds like they asked for permission to get out of the pilot rather than just declare that they're out of the pilot, which they could have done. Is that right?
This is the first I've heard today that they could just terminate it. I brought it to the IDA under guidance that the IDA would need to vote to terminate it. So maybe Russ, you can clarify whether the IDA needs to take action to terminate that pilot or whether the operating company can just do it.
Well, they've asked that the IDA approve the termination of the pilot. Do they have the unilateral right to terminate the pilot? Yes, they do, but there's a process, and typically when that happens, which is not very often, we do have the IDA approve the termination of the underlying lease and lease back and putting the property back on the tax roll.
Okay.
To authorize the termination really is not impairing what the taxing jurisdictions can do, does not put the IDA in any worse off position, nor the taxing jurisdictions. It just basically implements the request by the company to get officially back on the tax rolls and subject to full taxation, which by their calculation is less than what is payable under the pilot.
Okay, that's great. I would like to support this pending or assuming or contingent on their paying the existing bills. And I don't want the taxing
fine.
jurisdiction. I don't want the taxing jurisdictions to have to go chase them for the money. I think this is a bill that's owed. I'd be happy to support it going forward, but contingent on paying the outstanding bills.
Yeah, I think that's the
I can pass. I
consensus
will
of
pass that
the
along.
IDA. Is that anybody? Yeah. Okay.
So do we need to vote or would there be another meeting where there's a vote or Russ, how do you want to handle that?
Why doesn't the board, to the extent it's amenable to do this, is accept or approve the termination of the pilot subject to council determining what the plan is relative to outstanding and unpaid pilot payments, and to the extent we can get, and Heather, you and I can go through this, something from them that we can share with the board as to what the plan is, we can then, not have to come back to the board. If in fact they have not worked out a payment plan or whatever it is they are doing with the taxing jurisdictions, we simply won't terminate at this point.
Okay, do I have a motion to that effect?
I thought Jennifer had her hand up.
Incidentally, that was from before, but I was just about to put my hand up. So I was just reading through the email again, and I just want to be sure we understand and agree what the intent is here, because the last sentence, the beginning of the last sentence in the request says they're prepared to, in good faith, negotiate a settlement of their outstanding obligations. So I think there's some assumption that if we do what they want, they're going to try to renegotiate those outstanding amounts. And I just want, obviously, we don't necessarily want either the school district or the municipalities or the county to be interpreting the IDA as endorsing that they should pay less or renegotiate their outstanding tax bills. Right? What I heard you say was they need to pay their tax obligations if we're going to do this. So I just want to be clear that that's what we all are thinking, not like go ahead and try to negotiate a lower payment to the school. Right? Okay.
If I'm understanding that correctly, the message I should pass along would be that, the board discussed this. To the extent there are unpaid pilot amounts, those either need to be paid or the taxing jurisdictions need to agree to a lesser amount or payment plan. And once that's happened, we can then officially terminate.
Yes.
I mean, really, if the taxing jurisdictions consent to a lower amount, that's up to them.
Russ,
in my view.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's not up to us.
Russ,
Martha?
yeah, with all due respect, I think what you just described is a lot more waffly than I would feel. I don't want to hear about a plan. I want them to pay their taxes. I mean, yeah. I really, I don't want to have to send the school district to find a lawyer to go chase after the money. Look, we're being asked here based on a 3-line email the night before with no piece of paper. Here are the outstanding taxes. Here's what the tax responsibility would be if they went back to the tax rolls. Here's the delta. Here's the law. I mean, I think we're being asked to just really trust everybody and it'll all work out. I don't think that's really the right
Martha,
posture.
I'm not sure we're there
Yeah.
yet, Martha. And that we don't know what their plan is. We're assuming when they say plan that they wouldn't pay the full amount. A plan could also be timing of payment. So I think we need more information.
That would be fine.
Yeah, and I apologize I'm not saying as though we're going to give them a waffly response and say, okay, you guys figure it out, and once you do, let us know. No, the response from the IDA board, from what I'm hearing anyway, is that nothing is happening until you have an agreement with the taxing jurisdictions, and the taxing jurisdictions tell us to terminate. And then we're out of it.
Okay.
And to the extent they don't pay, it's up to the taxing jurisdictions to collect it, which quite frankly would be the case anyway. If there's a defaulted pilot, it's not as though Heather, Ina, and Russ go chasing after companies to make those payments. We advise the taxing jurisdictions, and the taxing jurisdictions would file a lawsuit. And that's no different here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do we want to do a motion to that effect to authorize
I mean,
that response? Or
I
not?
think that we're waiting for more from, I mean, I'm not sure that, I don't think that we
Okay.
have clear direction on what exactly we're doing here. There's like, either they're just authorized to back out of this thing on their own, and we'll approve that if they send us some formal something that they're doing that and it's within their rights to do so. But I think that the sense of the board is probably good enough to let Heather respond saying, you know, look, we talked about it. We want to know what your plan is. We want more information. And, you know, we'll consider it when you give us something real to consider in a timeframe that's appropriate to get in the board agenda.
Okay, is that the consensus of the IDA?
Yes, I agree.
Yes, okay, it looks like that's, so no motion. Good luck, Russ. Heather,
Thank you.
anything else on staff report?
So I did report that the annual jobs report, we're working on that. We should have that for next month's meeting. I wanted to report on some of the funding that the Development Corporation actually approved at last month's meeting. They supported 150,000, or I should say you supported 150,000 towards TCAD's Emergency Relief Loan Fund program for the manufacturing and more traded sector industries. That went out. We had over 50 inquiries, and as of last Friday, we had received and approved loans for 5 companies: GiveGab, Odyssey Semiconductor, Transonic Systems, Porous Materials, and Racker. So we still have $50,000 or $100,000 in that fund to do loans with. A lot of the inquiries, you know, were businesses that are just sort of looking at preserving their cash flow and may come back in the next couple of months. The Development Corporation also supported $150,000 for the Small Business Relief Fund, which was a partnership between TCAD and the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Ithaca Alliance, and the City of Ithaca. It was a countywide fund that is managed by Alternatives Federal Credit Union. 160 applications were received in 48 hours, and they awarded 96 awards of $4,000 grants to primarily Main Street businesses. I think about a third of them were in the city of Ithaca and the remaining throughout the county. So those funds are in the process of going out in a very quick turnaround. It was really a nice coordination between all the organizations and AFCU really stepping up to manage that program for us. And then the Development Corporation had also partnered to support some of the pre-development costs for the conference center, and a contract has been signed, and some of those funds are starting to flow as invoices are being received. And then I also wanted to report on City Harbor. They are still awaiting their seeker determination. It was supposed to happen this month, and it was pushed into next month. So that should come back for approval as soon as, or I should say when seeker is received. And that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Heather?
It's just for John. Where'd that halo come from? Everybody looking at John. The light
The
coming into
sun,
John's.
I have this western window over here. That's a literal actual lens flare. You know, they spend millions of dollars in the film and television industry trying to get lens flare. That's right. And it's like, all you got to do is sit in the sun. Really, it's not that hard.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
I have a question.
Hey, Ann?
Thank you for the report, Heather. I was just wondering at what point we'd be able to publicize, or at least somehow, not publicize, but at some point make public the list of the businesses that received grants.
Tom Knipe took the lead on putting out a press release, and it did go out, I believe, early last week, and it had a list of all of them. I can certainly forward that to everybody if you didn't get a chance to see that.
Okay, maybe I missed that. Thank you very much, because I know, more transparency is better. So thank you.
Just really brief clarification, sorry, they're forgivable loans. So most of them will be grants, probably almost 100% of them. But if for some reason somebody does not meet the criteria or do what they've said they will do, they will be obligated to repay the funds. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything
Thanks
else?
for funding that.
Questions or comments for Heather? We have some minutes from April 8th, 2020. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes? Somebody raise their hand?
I was actually trying to make a quick comment.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I had a quick comment too.
Right.
I just want to extend my gratitude, Heather. I think that the economic development professionals in this community have done an astounding job. I mean, you and Jennifer and Gary and Tom and many others that that I have not yet just listed, but I just really appreciate everything that you've done to try to help the businesses in our community try to navigate this completely unprecedented situation. It's making a tremendous difference. We're doing way better here than in most of the rest of the world, and especially most of the rest of New York State. And the work that you've done has been no small part of that. So thank you.
Okay, Laura?
I was about to say very similar message of gratitude for everyone in this community. And Heather, you've been really a key player in the response, and for people to be able to act so quickly, to respond so quickly to the needs of especially the small businesses in our community is just very impressive and makes me proud to be part of this community. So thank you.
I will pass on the credit to all of my partners. It really has been an amazing several weeks, and I'm thrilled that we've been able to work together and really get some things out that have been helpful. So I will definitely pass those kind words on from both of you. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just add that the TCAD website and the chamber website too are both fantastic compilations of all this material. I mean, there's just been some, like drinking from a fire hose, and both of the sites have really, you guys have really done a great job. Thanks.
All right. Okay. From there, minutes of April 8th, 2020. Do you have somebody raising their hand to move approval of the minutes? Martha moves. I need a second.
You're getting
Mike?
like 4 of them, Rich. I think Laura was the first. I don't know. Mike might have been in there somewhere.
Okay, Mike's hand went up before anybody else's, before everything froze on me there. So I'll go through the roll. In the present order, Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Jennifer Tavares,
Yes.
Laura Lewis,
Yes,
John Guttridge,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Martha Robertson.
Yeah.
And the chair votes yes. That's unanimous. Any other business to come before the Industrial Development Agency? Right? I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Somebody raise their hand. Hopefully they won't freeze. John moves. Jennifer seconds. Raise your hand if on the vote. I'm going to say that's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you all soon.
All right, have a good
thanks very
afternoon.
much, everybody.